are thousands of people that are members of this football club. We've now got more members at this point in the season than at any other season in our existence. That's a tremendous positive for us. Before the end of this year, we'll have or close to having over 3,000 adult members. We've never had that number before. We've got more season ticket holders than clubs that are playing the professional game, and this is on the cusp of us getting our own ground. It's a tremendously exciting time for us.
FC United of Manchester were formed in 2005 after a section of Manchester United fans became disillusioned with the club following Malcolm Glazer's controversial takeover.
As fans at United, we've been campaigning for years for the club to listen more to supporters. It was evident to us that not just Manchester United's executive, but also the executives at other clubs within the Premier League were just treating supporters like customers in the worst possible way, not even bothering with complaints or comments or wanting to understand what those customers, as they would call us, wanted. It was just imposing their will, forgetting the fact that clubs are nothing without the supporters. And the Glazers taking over was the final straw really for us. We are a co-op, we're a community benefit society, so our board have to demonstrate that they've discharged their responsibilities under the Constitution to show a community benefit before they can even put a winning team out on the pitch. The clue's in the title, and that is we're a football club, whereas most football clubs, certainly at the higher end, are run like football businesses, and there's no sense of club, there's no sense of everybody being in it together, of the fans, the players and the people who run the club being in it together. That's one of the things that we strive very hard to do, and the negative is that that's very difficult, and that's why it's not the standard model for running a football club. But nothing that's worth having comes easy.
The club has also had success on the pitch. They are currently fighting for promotion in the Northern Premier League, an achievement which would see them just 2 divisions below the Professional Football League. The growth of FC United has seen them begin construction work on their own community-owned stadium here in Moston, close to Newton Heath, the site where the original Manchester United were formed. Work on the 5,000 capacity stadium is expected to be completed by August, finally giving FC United their own permanent home.
If we're to grow and to move up the leagues, it'll depend on what we can actually do at the ground, and it'll make us financially sustainable for the long term.
Legendary Celtic manager Jock Stein once said that football without fans is nothing. And that might just be the case, with more and more supporter-owned clubs emerging across the UK, such as here at FC United of Manchester.
Less than 6 years ago, Portsmouth were FA Cup holders and hosting European giants AC Milan in front of the Fratton Park faithful. They now play host to the likes of Accrington Stanley after 3 relegations and entering administration twice in 3 years. Years of financial mismanagement left the club on the brink of extinction, with debts estimated to be in excess of £100 million. However, the club were finally saved, and they were taken over by a group that had the true interests of the club at heart: the Portsmouth Supporters Trust.
The Supporters Trust and the supporters owning the club, what it means is you've got people who really have the club's best interests at heart. And that's not to say individual owners don't have the best interests of their clubs at heart, but as we can see, the individual owner model can have some pretty catastrophic consequences as well.
Pam Wilkins, a board member on the PST, feels that football's governing bodies could have done more to help the club.
The fit and proper person test, the Premier League and the Football League were both pretty weak, and I think they realised that. They have actually upgraded them because of what happened at Pompey, but they're still just a self-certification. There's not a lot of detail about the person or going into their background.
In order to maintain a greater level of transparency between the club and its supporters, the Portsmouth Supporters Trust has published the club's financial forecast for the coming seasons. It shows how the club aims to be profitable by the 2014-15 season and demonstrates the PST's desire for a more sustainable future.
money's getting silly in football. There's only the big clubs that have got the money, and most of them are in debt as well. So yeah, fan-owned clubs, people care about the club. If it's owned by the fans, they care about it. They're not in for a reason of trying to make money or launder money or anything like that. They're in it because they're there to care about the club and keep it going. The idea is to remain sustainable, you know, not to get into big debts, just to try and get into the Premiership.
Adorning the walls of AFC Wimbledon's boardroom are pictures of some of the club's most historic moments. In 2002, following years of financial turmoil, the old Wimbledon FC were moved nearly 60 miles north and were later rebranded as Milton Keynes Dons. This sparked the formation of a new club, AFC Wimbledon, who wanted to remain in the club's true home of South West London and preserve the spirit of the old Wimbledon. Matthew Breach, chairman of the Don Supporters Trust, who own the club, spoke of the journey that AFC have made and also the problems faced by supporter ownership.
I mean, it's very weird. I mean, no one ever would have wanted it to have happened, but in the end, what we've ended up with is so much more than we would have done if we just carried on. I mean, the old Wimbledon would have struggled to be any better off in the league than we are today, and the way we've got here is just so much more fun. And I think everyone really has a sense of pride in what we've achieved. We have one of the lowest budgets in the division, despite having, you know, healthy crowds, so in the top half of the table in terms of crowds. But there's a limit to how much your average fan can put in. They buy the merchandise, they come to the games, donate money. We do a lot, but the real issue is a lot of the people who want to contribute lots of money really want to have a control over what they do with it. And it's that whole ego trip of a lot of, you know, the moneyed owners. They really want to be seen to be the driving force, and that's just against our ethos and the constitutions. We can't allow that. More supporters ownership is obviously a good thing because it helps to temper any excesses at the higher levels of the club. I think a lot of people, if they own their own club through a supporters trust, would get more enjoyment out of football because it's more them rather than someone else who's achieving. But I think for it to be really widespread, we need a little bit more support from the FA and the government to try and help level the playing field to a degree.
Supporters Direct are an organisation that helps supporters trust gain an influence in the running of their clubs. Their development manager, Kevin Rye, feels that due to the success of such clubs, a reform on ownership is a necessity.
On pitch, it's always great when our clubs succeed, but this is why we lobby on change and reform, and why we got so much support from across the political spectrum, is because everyone now recognises that there's not a case to be made for reform. The reform case has been made. The issue is now about how.
Although improvements are being made in the UK, many believe that we can learn from the German model of ownership.
It's the best example of supporter ownership in the world, yeah, of course. Or what the system has is it has restriction over private involvement in the ownership of a club, capped below 40, so below 50%, or 49.9%, the so-called 50% plus one rule. Then it has very strict regulation on debt and what you can do with your money, and it has strict regulation on who can be involved. To be honest with you, people talk about, they start getting into lazy terminology of foreign ownership. It's not foreign ownership that's the problem, it's bad ownership that's the problem.